Arsenal fans, hello the Nigerian football fans, you're welcome to the channel. In today's video we're talking about Viktor Gyokeres. Finally we've got it, here we go. And of course, Nigerian youngster Inter Milan midfielder goes on loan to Pisa. So let's dive straight into it. So finally, after I don't know, up to 30 days now or 60 days, we've been hearing the rumblings about Viktor Gyokeres joining Arsenal and Sporting Lisbon. Sporting director of football, CEOs and their board have been holding part, just being, what would I say, stubborn, but standing their ground. I think that's the right phrase to use, standing their ground and insisting at some point for 100 million euros, buyout clause to be paid by Arsenal or any club that was indeed interested in the services of Gyökeres. So eventually it's been done now. I think it's 63 million pounds guaranteed, and then 10 million pounds add-ons. And so for me, I think that's a decent fee to pay given the way the market is and given what he's done. I know a lot of rival fans, obviously I'm not an Arsenal fan, I'm a Chelsea fan, but some rival fans have been on about this whole thing about Viktor Gyokeres, he won't do well at in the Premier League. He played in the Premier League for Brighton, didn't do that well, did not get that much game time as well. That's one thing people for whatever reason tend to leave out, and then he played for Coventry, and then he really hit the numbers for Coventry, went to Sporting Lisbon, hit the numbers for Sporting Lisbon as well. And a lot of people have been saying, most of his goals he scores them, when steam on the offensive transition, as i.e. on counter attacks, that he won't get that much time in the Premier League. Well, those days are gone. Those days are gone when you had your Stoke Cities that would say, okay, we don't have as much quality as an Arsenal, we're going to defend deeply, and then we're going to hit you on the break. When you had your Boltons, now every team wants to press high. So everything wants to press high, everything wants to, defend with a high line. So don't, blow hot and cold. One moment, you want to tell the world that the best style of football is playing with a high line, playing that from the back. And then, because a rival club supposedly signs the striker, you want to flip a 180 to say he wouldn't score that many goals in the Premier League because teams are going to don't play that with that much of a high line. Of course, teams do. Now, I'm a Chelsea fan. I don't really want him to do well in the Premier League, but what I want is not what matters, because he's got the quality. If Arteta sets him up rightly and doesn't choose to play him in some weird, maybe right wing position or 10 position, or choose to just turn his game on its head, then he will thrive. He will do well. He will do well. So rival fans, either your club goes on to get players that can help them compete, or your coach adopts different tactics, focus on your team and stop, hounding Arsenal. Me speaking of Arsenal, it doesn't feel right, but that's the truth. They've got a very good striker, a striker I wanted at Chelsea, as opposed to Liam Delap. But Arsenal have gotten him. Manchester United were looking to get him out. He was offered to Manchester United at some point because Sporting Lisbon were doing what they should do for their own self, which is get the best deal possible for themselves. So that's why I always on this channel I say this: if you're a football player, you want to sign a contract with a club, just know that the club is looking out for its own interest, and you should look out for your own interest as well when you sign that agreement. Don't think that any gentleman's agreement is what the phrase gentleman's agreement is. Not really. It's a glorified way of saying parole contract, oral contract, contract that is enforceable. An oral contract is enforceable, but how do you then enforce it? That is the question. That is the question. How do you then enforce an oral contract? Because one party will say this is what happened, and the other party will say, oh, this is what is in the contract. And how do you then prove who's right? So overall, I think that's a good deal for Arsenal getting Viktor Gyokeres in. But would it be enough to score to lead Arsenal to the Premier League title? Look at the business that Liverpool are doing. Look at Man City as well, the business they've done and the quality of players they already have in their team. Chelsea, look at what Chelsea has done. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting Premier League season come August. So let's see how that shakes down. And then as well, I must talk about Ebenezar Akinsanmiro, one player that I really, really like. One of my most favorite players in football right now because of how he plays, how he controls the game, and he is Nigerian as well. So he's eligible to play for Nigeria. He just has the Nigerian nationality, and he can play for Nigeria. Therefore, so he used to play for Remo, Beyond Limits, and then played a bit for Remo Stars, if I'm not mistaken, in the Nigerian MPFL. The Nigerian MPFL team, I'm not quite sure if he did play in the Premier League, Nigerian Premier League, but he definitely played for Beyond Limits. And he was signed by Italian giants Inter Milan. He's been on their books, but he went on loan to Sampdoria. I think he was pretty decent there, but I think he had one major challenge, which was that the coach who signed him was Pirlo. Andrea Pirlo, absolute legend of the game, who sort of redefined that deep line playmaker role. At least in my lifetime, he's been one of those ones that actually redefined that deep line playmaker role. And he was a coach for Sampdoria. He went on and made the move for Ebenezar Akinsanmiro possible, because I would have thought he would have seen a bit of himself in it, even if I see Ebenezar Akinsanmiro as a more athletic version of Pirlo. If Pirlo had a bit of pace and was super athletic, then he'll be Ebenezar Akinsanmiro. So he went there, and not too long afterwards, Andrea Pirlo was sacked. So a different coach, more like a Ferrer, known as Joseph. So that was a pretty big challenge. I think that affected him a bit, but he still played well in that role, in that deep line playmaker, game controller role. He did play very well. So he's heading out on loan to Pisa as well, and hopefully he gets to play first team football. And for me, I think if after this season, what Inter Milan have to offer him is another loan deal, I think he should no longer renew or extend his contract with Inter Milan. Pick a club where you're going to play regularly, you're part of the culture, you're part of the fabric of the club, as opposed to being farmed out, every year like a piece of shirt or a piece of furniture. So if after the season comes to an end, that is 2025-2026 season comes to an end, Inter Milan are saying, we want to send you off to loan to another club, no, he should insist on making a permanent move. But you should do that tactically, because we've seen what can happen if you want to go toe-to-toe with clubs like Napoli and the likes. They can absolutely turn your career upside down. But I think Nigerian football fans, what do you think about Ebenezar Akinsanmiro making that move to Pisa? I think it's a good one, because he gets to play, he gets regular game time, and I hope that brings him with, into the eye line or sight line of Eric Chell, the head coach of Nigerian Super Eagles. For people like me who've been watching Ebenezar Akinsanmiro for a long time, we know what he can bring, and I seriously hope Eric Chell looks at him and sees what we see. Because if you want to play the way Eric Chell wants to play, which is you have 2 10s and a lone 6, you must have a lone 6 that is able to control the game, like a Rodri. You must have that sort of midfielder in your ranks. So I think he's the only one that brings that sort of sense of control to the Nigerian midfield at this point in time. So let's see how it all shakes down. But overall, good moves, big moves. Arsenal snagging, Viktor Gyokeres, finally. So Arsenal fans, Nigerian Arsenal fans, what do you think as well? And Ebenezar Akinsanmiro heading off to Pisa after extending his contract with Inter Milan. So at this point, we come to the end of this video, and hopefully I'll see you on yet another video. So stay well, stay blessed. Bye bye.